Hi, I'm Trisha Morris from Club Scrap, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to make this handy little file folder. It's custom created so that it performs a very specific function. When you're using Club Scrap's unique method of making scrapbook pages, before we do our assembly, we trim all of the papers that go onto a particular layout. And while we're trimming, we will file those pieces of paper into 4 different pockets that represent one pocket for each double page spread from 1 through 8. So this folder has 4 pockets in graduated size and height, and then this handy little flap here at the front. And when you're working with your papers, you'll just simply take that flap and put it underneath the top of your trimmer, and that automatically holds the file folders in place so that you can be filing while you're trimming. So it's a really handy thing, especially if you're working in a confined space. And I'll be using this at my workshops throughout the year to help me and the students stay organized in class when we have a very, very limited table space. So let's get started with the project itself. The first thing you'll do is choose the paper that you want to use for the project. And I'm using some papers from past Club Scrap kits that I feel are great candidates for this. And it's because they're extra heavy. They happen to be 100-pound cover weight. It's almost like it's a mat board and a paper, like a cross between the two. Several kits we've done, including, let's see, literature and office space, include that heavier type of cardstock. If those are still available, you'll want to look for those. If you don't have that, use Club Scrap's typical 80-pound cover weight. It will still work, but I just like the durability of that heavier weight. Now I'm going to be using 3 different colors to help you see some contrast when I'm assembling this, but on my actual samples I'm just working with a 1 color. It's totally up to you. So we have a little bit of prep work to do. How about we use the dark craft color for the actual largest structure. That's going to be the back wall and the front lip of the piece. And then we'll use 2 sheets of this light craft for the dividers between the pockets. And then we'll use the manila colored piece for the accordion folded sidewalls. So let's prep that paper while we're at it. I'm going to start up by checking the grain direction of this for the accordion folded sidewalls. I want to make sure that I'm scoring with the grain, so I can bend the paper easily in this direction. And I need a 3-inch piece off of this for that purpose. So I'm trimming just a 3 by 12. Now you could also trim this at 9 inches to get a nice 3-inch piece. And then we need our divider walls. They need to be 4 different sizes. The first one is going to be 5 inches, so just cut a 5-inch piece off of this paper. And then the other 3 walls will be able to be trimmed out of just 1 sheet of paper if you cut it at 8.5 and 4.5. And what I've just created are my graduated sidewalls at say 3.5, 4, 4.5, and then this last one is 5 inches. So now I have 4 divider walls. This last piece does not require any trimming, so let's set our trimmer aside just for now, and we'll do some scoring. I like to use my score pail, and especially the one that has lines every 1/8 inch, but for this particular project, as long as you have lines every 1/4 inch, you'll be fine. Once again, I'm checking my grain direction. The paper bends more easily this way. This is lots more stiff, so this is the way I want to plot my paper in my score pail. Now to make the base of the unit, you'll be doing a lot of scoring. Our first batch will start at 2.5 inches. Now let's go every inch, so 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, and stop at 6.5. After these 5 lines are drawn, take the paper and flip it. So don't rotate it, just flip it. Bottom now is at the top. And I'm going to have you score at 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, so basically what I've done is prepared for accordion folding just this middle section of the craft piece. Next, I need to prepare my accordion sidewalls. So on my sample, it's this portion right here. A lot of scoring to do here. I'm going to score at 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to skip 4 and score at 5, 6, and 7. Then I'm going to turn it over, flipping it again, so the bottom is now at the top. I didn't flip this way, just bottom to top. I'm going to score at 1/2, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. Skipping 4, now 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, and 7.5. So I have a bunch of score lines and a gap, and a bunch of score lines. One more time with the trimmer. We need to just simply trim this. My scored lines are on my left, and I have this larger unscored area on my right. The paper is horizontal. I'll trim at 8 and 4. Okay, so this is unscored piece is a scrap, and these two pieces will become the sidewalls. We can set our trimmer aside. One last preparation step that I felt is not necessary, but it's nice. And that is to use a crocodile or corner chomper, use a corner chomper on the 1/2" setting to round the corners of my divider walls. And because we're working with 100-pound weight paper, it is a lot heavier, but the corner chomper can handle a double thickness if you have the hand strength. Here's my 5" wall. And then I also have, this is the base unit that has the lower flap and then the back wall. So the flap is actually only 2.5 inches and the wider area is 5.5. So I'm going to round the 2 outside corners on the larger unscored area. And that's it for rounding corners. And now I have all of the components that I need ready to go to do the assembly. To hold this thing together, I'm using Club Scrap's bookbinding glue that's been added to a small needle-tipped applicator. You can get that on the Club Scrap website. I also have a bone folder. So we're gonna be folding on our score lines. Now remember, the bump of the score goes on the inside of the fold. So here's my bump, and that's going to become what I call a valley fold. And I'm not being real careful with this. It's not going to become a book structure, but I'm hoping to have it relatively straight, and I'll just give that a nice run over with my bone folder, and now I have a little accordion folded sidewall. So remember, bump of the fold, bump of the score, inside of the fold, and repeat that for the other sidewall. Okay, now for the base portion. I'm going to look for my bump adjacent to the 2.5-inch unscored area, and I'll just fold up on that. If you want, you can burnish. And then now I'm gonna fold back on this, so I'm accordion folding. And I'll just flip it back. Here's a bump, it becomes a valley. And then the next, I just kind of keep flipping. You can do it a couple of different ways. For example, I can do it this way and then flip the whole thing over and then fold back. I mean, it's just whatever makes you comfortable. I can see that's a little more awkward for me. And then fold forward. The answer to this is do it in a way that you're most comfortable with so that you end up with an accordion. Okay. So then I'll go through and just run down each of the 5 folds here on the outside. So it's starting to take shape. This is going to be the flap that goes under the trimmer. This is going to be the flap that stands up at the rear of the trimmer, and then these little valleys are going to become the holders of my sections. So here I have my sorted pile of dividers from tallest to shortest, and I'm going to install the tallest one first. So I'll just put the stack face down over here. Maybe I'll do it this way so my rounded corners are facing up. And I'll take my bookbinding glue in the needle tip applicator, and notice I have the short side facing me and the long side away from me. And the first valley stays clean. So I'll just put the tab down so that I'm now in my second valley, and I'll apply some of this bookbinding glue to the flap on the rear side of my valley here. Then I'm going to take the largest divider and drop it down into that valley and make sure it's flush from right to left and that the bottom edge of this flap is down in the valley. And depending on how much glue you use, that will reflect how much dry time. And if you don't use much, it doesn't take long at all for it to dry. So I'm just burnishing a little bit to make sure that that flap is going to stay down, and that should be great. So now I'm going to fold up the next, so here's my valley, and I'm going to close the valley, and here I have another tab I can apply the glue to. I'll reach for my next highest divider piece. Drop it down into the valley. Check to make sure it's flush from left to right. And I have spent probably the equivalent of days engineering this project so that it assembles as easily as possible. And I have tried a lot of different ways to assemble it, and I have found that this is by far the neatest and the easiest. Okay, now I have my divider in charge here. Then I'm going to bring up the next valley fold, apply adhesive to the back side of the valley, bring in my next highest divider wall, and it's basically the same process, flush left to right. The glue gives you a little bit of forgiving time, which is nice for making small adjustments, unlike a double-sided tape, for example. And it's once it's down, it's really, really, really down, which is another great feature. Okay, I have one last valley I can bring up, and this will also get some adhesive. I wish I could show you how many of these I tried making that ended up in a garbage can. Okay, so here is my last divider wall in the valley. Just burnish it a little bit. Okay. Next, I think what will be helpful is some binder clips. And that will help provide an extra hand for us when we're assembling those sidewalls. Let's just start. Try to make sure you can see this here, probably this way. Let's just start now with the back wall and facing away from you and one of our accordion pieces. Let's remember that the accordion will be placed with the free edge aligned with the back wall of my unit here. So it gets placed, the first valley will get placed right in there. And then we're just going to do what we call a dry fit, no glue here. And it will be placed in every single wall in between. Sometimes they get a little stubborn, and you just have to make them do what you want them to do, which is to shove one of those mountain folds down into each valley. Until they're married up. So now I'm getting there. Now, as I've been making these, the one thing I've noticed is that even though the first flap is a 1/2 of an inch, and then the last flap of my accordion fold is just a 1/2 inch, do you see how it peaks past the edge? And I don't really like that. Now, because of the thickness of this paper and stuff, there's going to be some of that sidewall extending beyond the edge of the unit, but I think I don't want that free edge extending beyond. So what I'm going to do is just take a scissors and just trim a little tiny bit off of the outside edges of each of my ends here. So I'm removing about 1/8 of an inch. And I did that after doing a test run of the fit. Okay, so once again, I'll drop those mountain folds down into each valley. Make sure it's shoved down as low as I can get it. All right, and that looks pretty nice. Now, if you're working with one color, you won't notice that quite as much. I'm going to take a binder clip and just clip that together to hold everything in place. No adhesive. I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other end. Again, my free edge is lined up with the outside edge of my back wall, and I'm dropping those mountain folds into the dividers. Okay, now always remember that this flap right here needs to be free and clear so it can slide underneath your trimmer. And look at what a nice fit I have here on this piece. I'm really happy with that. Maybe extends a little bit out from the back, so let's just go ahead and trim it off. Just a hair off of each piece. You could use your trimmer for this or scissors. Okay, let's pop that back in there. Drop, 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 drop. Now, one thing about this is after you've made about, I don't know, 40 of them, that's a piece of cake. I got a little bit of bookbinding glue on my binder clip. Okay, so let's just go back to the other side, and we can just glue one corner at a time. So note that the only areas that will receive adhesive will be the little tab on the front and the little tab on the back. Let's start with the little tab on the back here. I'll remove just one binder clip, kind of hold everything in place, and peel up that back wall to add glue to the tab. Remember, the free edge of the tab should be aligned with the back wall of this unit. And just drop it right back down and put your binder clip back on. Okay, flip it over. Let's do the same thing for this back wall. Just kind of peel it forward a little bit. Apply your adhesive to the tab and close and clip. So now the back wall is essentially ready. Let's do the same with the front. Now remember that this is your tab for resting on the trimmer, so pull the first divider wall back. There is the tab that needs adhesive. You can see how careful I am with that. It's like the needle tip of the applicator dispenses the perfect amount of glue for this project. And close. Okay, now you just have to wait a second for that to dry. And then you also want to make sure that excess glue hasn't unintentionally adhered anything for you. Look at that. It sits up on its own. It's got a pocket for layouts 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and 7 and 8. So as you're trimming paper for all of your 8 layouts, as you're trimming, distribute the pieces to the appropriate folder, and when you go to assemble your pages, just slide the materials for your layout out of the pocket and then assemble your page. It just saves a ton of time. And if you'd like to, you can label both the left and right edges of the pockets. Now, it is good to note that the pockets are only 12 inches wide, and many times you'll have paper that's 12 inches wide. In that case, I just lay the paper into the pocket at a slight angle, and again, the trimmer just holds it up and in place. Well, I hope you found this video helpful, and thanks for joining us. If you get a chance, be sure to click subscribe at the button below in the lower left corner of your screen so you don't miss out on any fun projects from Club Scrap. I'll see you next time.